The first-class cabin was calm, filled with quiet chatter and the soft clinking of glasses until the peace shattered in seconds. Two young black twins, neatly dressed and polite, had just settled into their seats, excited for their first flight in luxury. But across the aisle, a white woman narrowed her eyes, clearly displeased. Her expression shifted from irritation to anger as she muttered something under her breath, glancing at them like they didn't belong there. Moments later, when one of the twins accidentally brushed past her while adjusting his seatbelt, she snapped. Words were exchanged, voices rose, and before anyone could process what was happening, she lashed out her hand, striking one of the boys across the face. The entire cabin froze. The flight attendants rushed over, passengers gasped, and the twins sat in stunned silence, their young faces filled with shock and confusion. The woman, still fuming, crossed her arms as if she had done nothing wrong, but what she didn't realize was that she had just made the worst mistake of her life. Because the woman walking down the aisle next confident.com and carrying the unmistakable authority of power wasn't just any passenger. She was their mother. And more than that, she was the CEO of the very airline this woman was flying on. The cabin fell silent again as their mother stopped beside the seats, her eyes locking on the woman. The tension was thick. Something big was about to happen. The woman's confidence started to fade as the twins' mother stood before her, dressed in an elegant navy suit that matched the airline's colors. Passengers whispered quietly, unsure of what was happening but sensing that this moment was far bigger than an ordinary in-flight argument. The flight attendants, now recognizing who had just stepped in, stood a little straighter. One of them subtly nodded, as if silently saying, "She's here." The mother's calmness carried weight. She didn't raise her voice. She simply looked at her sons first, brushing her hand gently over the cheek of the boy who had been struck. Her eyes softened for a second before turning toward the woman who had caused the scene. That gaze, steady and composed, held more power than anger ever could. The woman in the seat began to fidget, realizing that this was no ordinary passenger she had confronted. The twins' mother took a slow breath, scanning the cabin. She had built this airline from the ground up, dedicating years of her life to creating a company that celebrated respect and equality. Now, standing there, she was face to face with the very prejudice she had worked to erase. Passengers exchanged looks, some reaching for their phones but hesitating when they saw the seriousness in her expression. The air felt heavier with every passing second. No one dared to speak. The woman who had struck the boy opened her mouth to explain, but the mother lifted her hand slightly, signaling her to stop. What she said next would change everything. The woman's voice trembled as she tried to defend herself, saying she didn't mean any harm and that it was just a misunderstanding. But the mother's expression didn't change. The twins sat quietly, their wide eyes following every word, not yet fully understanding how something so small had turned into such a big moment. The passengers leaned in, caught between curiosity and disbelief, realizing they were witnessing something deeply human, an unspoken struggle about respect, pride, and perception. One of the flight attendants stepped forward nervously, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. She had served under the twins' mother for years and knew how rare it was to see her in this kind of moment face to face with the kind of ignorance she had always fought against from behind boardroom doors. The crew glanced at each other, waiting for direction, but the mother said nothing yet. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, word had spread. The captain discreetly contacted ground operations, explaining that there was an incident involving the CEO. Even the pilots fell silent for a moment, understanding the weight of those words. Back in the cabin, the tension grew heavier. The woman's earlier arrogance was gone, replaced by uncertainty. Passengers whispered about who the twins really were, some recalling news articles about the airline's young founder's children. The mother finally looked around, her calm voice cutting through the murmurs. She didn't raise it, but it carried enough force to silence the entire cabin. What she was about to say would test everyone's sense of fairness and truth. The entire first-class cabin seemed to hold its breath. The twins' mother stood tall in the narrow aisle, her calm presence commanding more attention than raised voices ever could. The woman who had caused the scene sank slightly into her seat, her face pale as realization slowly replaced her earlier anger. The mother's voice, steady but firm, filled the silence. She spoke about dignity, how every passenger, no matter their background, deserved the same respect. Her words weren't loud, but each one landed with weight, echoing through the cabin like a quiet storm building strength. The twins watched her closely, their fear easing into pride. They could see that this was more than just about them, it was about something bigger. Every passenger could feel it too. A man in the back cleared his throat, uncomfortable, while another passenger shifted in her seat, eyes glistening as if she'd seen moments like this before. The crew stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene or just let the moment unfold. The mother then turned her gaze back to the woman. "Do you understand what you've done?" she asked softly. The question wasn't meant to accuse, it was meant to make her reflect. But before the woman could answer, a senior flight attendant quietly approached the aisle, whispering that airport security was already waiting when they landed. A ripple of murmurs spread again, tension rising like static. The plane felt smaller now, the air heavier. Everyone knew the next few seconds would decide everything, how this moment would end. and what kind of truth would be revealed next. Before anyone could say another word, a man from the back of the cabin suddenly stood up. His voice cut through the tense silence as he said he had seen everything from the beginning and that what happened wasn't as simple as it looked. All eyes turned toward him. He wore a business suit and carried himself with quiet confidence, but there was something in his tone that made everyone pause. The twins' mother looked at him calmly, waiting for him to continue. He explained that before the woman ever reacted, he had overheard her complaining to another passenger that some people don't belong in first class. The cabin grew even quieter. The woman froze, her hands trembling as she tried to interrupt, but the man kept speaking. He revealed that he was an off-duty airline executive from another company, someone who had attended industry events with the twins' mother in the past. His presence added a new weight to the moment. This wasn't just a dispute anymore. It was about to become a public statement of accountability. The twins glanced at each other, their nervousness returning as passengers started whispering again. The tension was sharper than ever. The mother's expression didn't change, but her silence spoke volumes. The crew exchanged glances, realizing this was no longer just a passenger issue, it was an ethical one that would make headlines if handled wrong. The woman shifted uncomfortably in her seat as the man took out his phone, saying he had recorded everything. The air thickened, something big was about to unfold. The cabin was silent, except for the faint hum of the engines. The man held up his phone, showing the video to the flight attendants first. It clearly captured everything, the twins quietly taking their seats, the woman's angry remarks, and finally, the moment she lost control. Gasps filled the air as passengers leaned closer, their earlier doubts now replaced with quiet disbelief. The truth was no longer a mystery. The twins' mother finally spoke, her voice calm but steady. She thanked the man for stepping forward and turned to the woman, who now looked completely defeated. "I built this airline so everyone could feel safe here," she said softly, her tone firm yet graceful. "First class isn't about status, it's about respect, and today, you forgot that." Her words hung in the air, resonating with everyone who heard them. The woman lowered her head, unable to respond. Just then, the pilot's voice came through the intercom, announcing that the flight had been temporarily rerouted due to a request from company leadership. Murmurs rippled through the cabin as realization hit the mother had quietly instructed the crew to return to the gate. But before anyone could judge her decision, she surprised everyone again. She turned to the twins and said gently, "We'll let her apologize, not for us but for the lesson." The woman hesitated, then whispered an apology, her voice barely audible. The mother nodded once, calm and composed. No punishment, no humiliation, just dignity. The passengers watched in silence, realizing that true power didn't need anger to make its point. As the plane returned to the gate, the tension that had filled the cabin slowly began to fade. The twins sat quietly, still processing what had happened, while their mother stayed beside them, calm and collected. The woman who had caused the scene kept her eyes down, realizing how much her assumptions had cost her. When security officers entered, the twins' mother spoke first, explaining that the situation had been handled and no further action was needed. Her decision surprised everyone, but it showed the kind of leadership that defined her, strong, fair, and grounded in grace. Passengers began to applaud softly, not out of excitement, but out of respect. They had witnessed something far deeper than a first-class dispute. They had seen what true authority looked like when paired with empathy. One of the attendants quietly told the twins she was proud of them for staying calm, and they smiled, the fear finally leaving their faces as they left the plane. The woman approached the mother one last time, her voice low but sincere. She said she had learned more in those few minutes than in years of travel. The mother simply nodded, offering a polite smile before turning to her sons. Outside, as the sun dipped low across the runway, the twins walked between their mother, holding her hands. They didn't need to say much, the lesson was clear. Respect has no class, and power, when used with kindness, always leaves the strongest mark.